gonna give nobody none of my jelly rolls. I wouldn't give you a piece of this cake to save your soul. My mom told me today, before she went away, to be a good boy, she'd bring me a toy. I'm my mama's pride and joy. Now there ain't no use for you to keep on hanging round. I love you, but I've got to let you down.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Castálio Podcast, episode number 114. And I am Bruno Rocha, speaking from Guarulhos, São Paulo.
I'm Augie Maciel from Chapel Hill, North Carolina.
And I am Eliezer Rezende, speaking from Pouso Alegre, Minas Gerais. Our guest for today is a software engineer in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. She is a co-organizer of Vancouver PyLadies and the PyCascades conference. She is also a new Python core developer, contributing to the official Python documentation, Python Developers Guide, Python Core Workflow, and Python.org. She is also the first person we interview for this podcast who has credits for movies on IMDB. So it is with great pleasure that we welcome Mariatta Wijaya.
Wijaya.
I'm sorry.
Hi, no problem. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. I'm so excited.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. And usually we do a little section where we have some messages or some comments for the community, but we are actually ready and really excited to do this interview. And we're going to start with the questions right away. So there's no break for you. We're just going to jump right into it. I actually get to ask the first question. So as Eliezer mentioned earlier, we noticed that you are credited with several movies when we went to IMDb. The new Spider-Man movie and the Emoji movies being a couple of them. So can you tell us, what is your involvement with movies and animation?
Okay, so my involvement is really, I work at a visual effects company. That's all. Like, I don't actually make the movie. I don't know anything about how to do visual effects or animation. I don't even know how to use Photoshop. But I work at Sony Pictures Imageworks in Vancouver as a software engineer in the infrastructure team. So I built some web-based applications that are used by pretty much everyone in the company. And this, like, I write web apps, automation scripts written in Python, Django. So that's what I do. That's how I get credit by working in a visual effects company that makes those movies.
Gotcha. Well, so then tell us a little bit about, your work at Sony Pictures, and not just your work, just in general. Like, what do developers do there? So if I am a developer and I work with you at Sony Pictures, what would I do? And I guess I got a little more specifically, how do you use Python there? What do you use it for?
So we have a few different teams working to help our artists do their job. So some of us do work with, like, creating. They probably work more closely with the visual effects artists, like using tools like Maya or things like. I don't even know. But for me, I've been creating. I maintain web app that is called Timekeeper. It's something that every artist, every day, they gotta go in and log their time, telling us what did they work on, how many hours, and at the end of the week, I need to send all of those to payroll so they get paid properly. Now, every artist, every show has their own really complicated accounting coding of exactly based on what movie they work on, which shot or which task. Like, are they doing animation? Are they doing lighting? Very complicated accounting code that my software needs to know that this code applies to this person in Vancouver or LA, different. So basically, I have to deal with all of this data and display those in the web app that the artists, the non-technical people can understand. Like, they don't really want to understand what is this coding. They just want to go in, enter time, and go back to work. They don't like using this. They don't like to be bothered. So I need to make this app really user-friendly and easy to use. So that's what I do. And we have other tools that helps our artists to like, they work on different shots or different tasks every day. Say they create a certain shot and they need this to be reviewed by the director. Maybe the director have feedback, this red color, make it less red or something like that, or whatever feedback that that the director wants them to do. So it's like a code review, but a review for their animation. And we need to track all these reviews. So we gotta keep track of the notes. When was this made? Has the artist addressed these notes, these comments, and did they make a new version of it based on the old one? So we gotta track all of these activities. So that's a lot of things going on there. Those are the things that I've been involved in, and my coworker, they involved in various different things. I don't think I'm at liberty to really say everything, so
Of course.
I'll say what I've been involved in.
Sure. Can you share with us like what are some of the technologies that are used for this tool?
I use Python, and at work I use Python 2.7, and we use Django as the backend with Oracle database. And yeah, I'm not sure how much I can divulge.
That's fine.
Yeah, I think I'll stop at that.
So how did you become a Python core developer?
So I've been contributing since last year, and in fact, I had trouble in the beginning. Like I wanted to contribute and I didn't know how. Then I reached out to Guido van Rossum, and with his guidance, I've been able to do some more contribution. And I think after I started contributing, I also met with a few other core developers like Brad Cannon and Raymond Hettinger while I went to PyCon Canada. So Raymond offered to also mentor me into continuing contributing, basically just want to help motivate me to do it. So I think after several months, the core developers and especially Raymond noticed my work, and he proposed that I become the next core developer. So the process is that he has to propose this to the existing core developer saying, I want to propose Mariatta as a new core developer, and all the other core devs, they have to vote yes or no. I think most of them say yes, and that's how I really become a core developer, even though I don't think I was really qualified for it at that time, but I'm still learning on what exactly I'm supposed to be doing as a core developer. It's a story.
Well, I think we learn every day, right? So even those who are core developers, I'm pretty sure they keep learning.
I'm still learning from not only from Guido, from Raymond, but from everybody else. I keep asking for advice from other core devs too. So
we know that in the Python world, there's something called a PEP, right? A PEP, which is a Python enhancement proposal. Can you tell us a little bit about this topic and how does it work? And also, can anyone write and submit a PEP? And what is Guido's role in the review process for PEPs? So 3 questions. It's an overloaded question. What is a PEP? Can anyone write it? And what does Guido do with those?
All right. So a PEP stands for Python Enhancement Proposal. So it's a document you have to write if you have a really great idea of how Python can be made even better. And I talk about this in my other talk, but there is a tab that really explains what it is. Tab number 1 is the purpose and guideline of a PEP. So it has very detail of it, but the workflow is like you don't need a PEP for everything, only something that's really major new feature, things that might break backwards compatibility, basically huge things. And you don't just go ahead and start writing a PEP by yourself. First, you need to pitch your idea first to the Python ideas mailing list. And if it seems like this idea makes sense or a lot of people are interested, then you might be invited to write a PEP. It can be you, it can be another core devs, but basically I think you should wait until a core devs or a PEP editor actually says, all right, it's time to write up a PEP. Then you can start writing. And it has another purpose, is that sometimes you start with an idea and you thought, this is great, why don't we have it yet? And as you start writing the PEP and designing your API or whatever you want to implement, you might start realizing that, oh, there is certain problem to this idea or whatever, you know. So it's just a way to really, it's not just for you to say, let's do this. So the community wants you to really think this through, have a clear plan, sound, Pythonic, and it's a real enhancement. It's not just something you want. Like if the whole community said, yes, this is great, let's put it in, let's think about this and plan for, you know, to have this into Python for the next major release, something like that. What else? You want to know about Guido?
What's Guido's role? Yeah.
So he is the BDFL, the benevolent dictator for life for Python. So he is the one who will say, yes, let's accept this PEP, or no, I don't want this. And he will not just say, no, I don't want it because I don't want it. He will give real reasons of why this cannot be accepted. And the idea is that after he provides this reason, you are supposed to, if other people want to propose the same thing, we can say, it's been proposed, it has problems. How about you try to address these problems? And if you can address these problems, maybe at that time we can consider a new PEP. And I think he is the one who gets to accept all the PEPs, well, almost all, but in some cases he delegated this responsibility to others. So that sometimes you will see PEPs that has BDFL delegate. So those things happen.
Gotcha. And for those who are listening now or watching us live, actually, Mariatta, you gave a very nice talk at PyCon Australia. You just returned from PyCon, and you actually talk a lot about this topic, right? So we're going to share on the show notes for this episode. We'll add a link to that talk. Definitely recommend it. She does go through a lot of the details about how to get a PEP approved. Some really interesting information in there. So I'll make sure that I'll include that in the show notes for those who are either watching now or are going to listen to the audio later.
Cool.
All right, so moving on. There are many PEPs waiting for review and or approval, and some of them which have been rejected. So can you tell us about a PEP that you really liked and that was accepted, and perhaps another one which did not?
Well, so I think those who knows me knows which PEP is my favorite. So PEP 498. That's the talk I gave at PyCon Australia, and it's basically a PEP that produces F strings, and I like it. It has an interesting backstory. I mean, there has been so many ways to format strings already. So why do we even need another one? And why did we decide to have another one? That's very interesting story, and that's what I talk in my presentation at PyCon Australia. And it makes life much easier for me, instead of, you know, those %s or those format where it's really verbose. And it's interesting that it takes this long since Python first created until now that we have this really simple way to format strings. Like, why didn't we think of this before? That's something that interests me. Like, the history of the progression of how this feature came to existence. And it's so simple. This is one of my favorite things, the app strings. And it's accepted. I think it was initially proposed about 2 years ago, actually, and in 2015. The idea was proposed in July. The PEP came out August, and Guido accepted the PEP like almost immediately in September. So this is really quick, nice, great new feature in my opinion. Now a different PEP that is of my interest is that PEP 517. It's for packaging basically. The authors are Nathaniel J. Smith and Thomas Clifford. I don't know how to pronounce the name, sorry. With the BDFL delegate is Nick Coughlin, who's overseeing this PEP. And this PEP was initially proposed in 2015, so also 2 years ago. And until now, it's still in draft mode. It's still in discussion. There are problems to it that we still couldn't come up to an agreement. Very different story with PEP 498, where it seems it got approved almost immediately. But PEP 517 is interesting because everybody wants to see this happen. Like there is this utils mailing list. Everybody's keep asking, what is the status of this? We want this now. And it depends on the author to continue. And I think everybody wants this to happen. They are thinking about it, but somehow I think there were disagreements between the different people in the packaging community. So this is an interesting to me that how can something that everybody wants yet it's stalled for a couple years. I don't actually know all the details of it. I just started following it, but it's another interesting case study. I would like, once this is done, I have given a monologue of PEP 498. I hope the authors of PEP 517 one day give a talk about this PEP. So that's a PEP that I'm following right now. Another PEP that is of interest of me, PEP 401, titled PDFL Retirement. So this PEP is a joke PEP. It's an April Fool's PEP written long time ago about what happens when Guido decides to retire. And it's not only funny to read, but I think it's actually a serious thing we need to think about in this community. While I know Guido's probably gonna be around for a long time, I've actually just, while at PyCon Australia, I went to a talk given by Vicky Brasher about post-succession planning. Like, I think there are many open source projects out there that has a buzz factor of 1. That if the project maintainer decides to leave, the whole community that has depended on it, what are they gonna do when they retire or they quit or they burn out, don't want to do this anymore? I think this is something we need to think about, and that's why I thought about PEP 401 recently, because I'm not sure if we have any plan. Not that I wish anybody go away, but I mean, sometimes even within core devs, some of us want to take a month of break. People want to go on vacation, and a lot of people are depending on them to review things, to make sure our Python is good. And I think we don't really need to think about, when we talk about succession planning, it's not just about the leader leaving, but there are other critical roles in our community, not only in open source project, in meetups. What if meetup organizers want to leave? Who's gonna take over? Is anybody think about this? And so I've started thinking about this recently. And when you ask about which PEP interests me, I think of PEP 401. What happens if somebody in our community retires? I don't know. I think we gotta think about it.
Absolutely. Actually, I wasn't really aware of PEP 401 or 517. I can totally see why, anything related to packaging in Python would be a hot topic and a hard problem to crack, right? Because there are a few solutions out there. There are some new solutions just recently about packaging. It is very important in my opinion. And I can totally see, like I said, why, this may be taking longer than PEP 498. But I think that's a good segue into my next question for you, which is, with F strings, right? And I'm not cursing here, people. That's what it's called. It's F dash string.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not cussing here. So it's PEP 498. I feel that now, for anyone who's new to Python, I believe that string interpolation will become easier to understand and to use. And it's also become something very powerful because you can do some things that you couldn't do before, but it does require a newer version of Python. So 3.6, right? You have to be on Python 3.6 at least to use it. But the question that I have for you is this. Now that we introduced this new way to do string interpolation, we're still keeping the old way out there. So there are, I guess, 3 ways that you can do string interpolation right now, and they sort of seem to contradict with one of the lines of the XenoPython, right? Which is it's got to be one way of doing things, I guess. So what do you think about that? Do you think, in your opinion, are we going to move to a future version of Python where we're going to drop the old ways of doing string interpolation? Do you think that by having these 3 methods available right now, are we contradicting the XenoPython?
Yes, I think we are contradicting the XenoPython, and I think during the PEP process, during the proposal of this, there are a few people who just completely opposing this. They gave a vote of -1,000. I don't want this to ever happen. It's extra work for me, but I think it's for the better, and I don't know if there's any plan to remove the old ways of formatting. I think those will stay for a while because people really want it for backwards compatibility. But the question about the XenoPython now, PEP 20, right? I think people are gonna judge me on this. I think it's a guideline. I think it's okay if you deviate from it. I don't always follow it. That's me. I think many of this makes sense. Yes, I agree. Readability counts. But in this case where it seems like there are 3 different ways to do the same thing that contradicts, I think this new way is better. Makes your life easier. You're typing less. Strings is faster. So there are a lot of good things that comes of it. I think we should not reject it just because we are contradicting the XenoPython. That's my thought. And even with PEP 8, I don't always follow PEP 8. So I don't use linters. I have PyCharm that will tell me that I'm not following PEP 8, and that's fine. But I don't like it when things like PyLadies complaining, saying, "Hey, this has to be imported somewhere else, or I need to shorten my string by 2 characters." Okay, I don't use linters. So it's just a guideline to me. That's my confession.
Okay, don't worry. We won't tell anyone. Don't worry about that.
Don't tell the Cornells.
No, of course not.
Okay, so I'll change the topic a little bit here.
Okay.
You and Augie have talked about, you talked a bit before this interview, and you've mentioned that how much you like and enjoy the Python community. So can you tell us a bit more about what you like about it?
So I I really like the fact that I've always been able to find supportive, members of the community, Python community, even though I've never actually met them in person in real life, like not even face hangout or anything. Like I've been helped with people through Twitter, through Slack, like especially from PyLadies community. I joined their Slack channel, and I've got a lot of help from PyLadies community. People I never really seen in real life, yet the people who are strangers. And our parents keep telling us don't talk to strangers on the internet. Yet there are this nice community out there who I never know, and they have been really supportive to me and have been really accepting. That's something that I really like, and I always look forward to actually meet them at conferences. That's why I kind of really like going to Python conferences, because finally I get to see the person who I follow on Twitter and just tell them, hey, I follow you on Twitter and you help me a little bit. So it's fun experience for me. So I think Python community is awesome.
That's pretty cool. And in general, I want to know, like, specific in general about the Python community. Do you think that the Python project itself is well documented? Do you think that there are some gaps? So if your answer is no, I don't think the Python project is well documented, is it because of the tools, the format that the documentation is written in? What's your opinion on this topic?
I think it can definitely be made better. I think there are some areas, I've heard it several times, like for people who are new to Python, they got lost in that documentation in docs.python.org. Like some things are just not making sense. Some people come not from programming background, because Python is now really easy to learn. There are many people who are not traditionally programmer. They're learning Python for small scripts that they want to use. And they don't really understand what is object-oriented, what is a class. And sometimes you can find in documentation like that, sometimes we use terms like that and not really explaining what it is. So I think our documentation can be made better. And I think maybe one way is that we need to know the audience, or we need to somehow categorize the docs based on the audience. Say if somebody just knew what is the purpose of them learning Python, maybe we need to be clear, like this is the sections for you, things like that. Sometimes the API documentation are written by the core developers themselves, whoever wrote it. Sometimes we are really not the best person to write it because we know the subject matter too well. We made assumptions of things, how it works. I think sometimes it's better to have, an outsider who has no prior knowledge try to write the docs based on their perspective. And I think as core developers, we should encourage that. Yes, if core devs implemented this feature, of course they know what needs to happen, but still sometimes we miss things. And again, like I said, sometimes we assume too much, and I'm not gonna say maybe sometimes I have this attitude of I don't care, I'm assuming you know this, so I'm not gonna explain it anymore. I think that's the wrong attitude, but it definitely can be better.
Gotcha. Well, so actually, Bruno left a question for you, and this may actually lead to some flame war discussion, I guess, and later on. So it is not the intent, But if anyone sees that as a flame bait, I blame Bruno. And since he's not here, he can't defend himself. So I'll leave it at that. Okay. But his question, he's got a comment and then the question follows. But basically, he's saying that he likes to write, whenever he needs to write any kind of documentation, he likes to use Markdown. Okay. He also thinks that restructured text is a barrier for entry for anyone who wants to write any kind of documentation. Okay. And he prefers Markdown. He thinks it's easier to use. The syntax is easier for newcomers to pick up and learn and start using it. That's his opinion right there. He also mentioned that the Rust language, right, the new Mozilla language, that they seem to have adopted Markdown as a format for documentation. Even the doc strings themselves are written on Markdown. Okay, so the question is, do you think that Python doc strings should be written in Markdown format because, you know, it may increase participation for people who may want to write better documentation and stuff like that in the source code?
Okay. Markdown versus restructured text. I respect people's opinion and choice of using Markdown, and I don't think you will see it changing in the Python community. I don't think we will move away from restructured text because restructured text was developed for documenting Python. There was a pep about that. So I think I read somewhere in that pep that it wasn't adequate. The Markdown was not adequate to document Python. That's why they adopted and developed restructured text. So I don't think it's going away. But is it creating a barrier? I don't think so. I've used Markdown, and to be honest, I only learned restructured text last year only for the purpose that I can contribute to CPython. I did not use restructured text before this. I did not use it at work. I don't document my stuff at work, not my job. I don't think it's better because it's something you can learn. There are resources out there where you can learn how to use restructured text, just like how you can learn how to use Markdown. It becomes a choice whether you want to do it or not. So that's my opinion about it.
Yeah, that's fair. So since we are talking about documentation, I'd like to know if I'm a new contributor and I want to help with the documentation effort, like you do. How do I get started? And what are the tasks that I can help with?
So if you go to bugs.python.org, that's where all our issues are. That's our issue tracker. There is a very specific filter, like things are of type documentation. So that's where you can start looking at what are open issues for documentation if you're looking for an issue to work on. And the only thing you need is basically you need to have things installed. And we actually have some links about like the guideline, the style guide, the documenting. In the CPython developers guide, there is a specific section that says documenting Python. So that's where you should look and read to learn how to start documenting. Yeah, you gotta learn how to write restructured text. And there's also a docs mailing list. So basically whenever somebody create an issue that is related to documentation, you will get notification, like email notifications about it. So that's worth subscribing to if you are interested, or people who are interested to help with documentation.
So other than the mailing list, I did hear you say, you mentioned Slack. So do you guys use Slack for this kind of communication? Like for people who are contributing, IRC, how do you communicate other than through the mailing list?
I think in Python, we use the mailing list. There is IRC channel, so Python dev on Freenode. I think I'm I'm not on IRC. There is Slack for PyLadies members. Like you have to be a member of PyLadies, or you identify as a member of PyLadies or supporting PyLadies, you can join that. Yeah, I think emails, the mailing list, and IRC are the main ways to communicate, and also just commenting on the issue itself.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're gonna share all these links to all these things that we're mentioning in the show notes. So if you're listening and you are interested in learning a little bit more how you too can contribute to the Python project, and especially if you want to help with the documentation effort, we're definitely going to share those links for you. Now, Mariatta, we're gonna change topics once again because a little bird told us earlier today that you created a game called Tic-Tac-Taco Pizza.
Yes.
So, I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and then eventually we'd like for you to show it to us. So we're gonna have you play, I guess, against yourself or against the computer live here on YouTube. But before we even do that, I wanted to know, like, what motivated you to write the game?
I just want to have fun. I just want to find an excuse to write something. And I mean, I've been a developer programmer for many years. I'm always writing for somebody else. I like given a task. And I mean, that's fine. That's how I make my living. But sometimes it's fun to just write whatever I want without anybody judging. So I decided it's something that I've been trying to do for the last few months, like come up with personal projects just for myself. And if somebody else finds it useful, that's great. But Tic-Tac-Taco Pizza, I think it came up one day when I commented on Twitter that, this one day I'm gonna forget when I congratulate people on their first contribution to CPython. I might forget. I usually say, congratulations, tada, with the, emoji colon, tada colon. I'm afraid one day I'm just gonna be lazy and say taco, because taco, when I type TA, taco shows up first. Like, what if I got lazy and just choose taco? And people are saying, I like taco. I like to be congratulated with taco. And one person said, maybe there should be a taco.py. So that made me thinking, I want to write something that uses taco somehow. Like, I want to have something that says taco.py or whatever. Unfortunately, taco.py already exists. There's already a package called taco in pip. So I gotta think of something else. Somehow I think of Tic-Tac-Taco Pizza. So that's the backstory of it. Really silly.
That's pretty cool. Actually, I was going to PyPy right now to see what taco is, because it's a taco module for Python. Okay, I'm gonna have to look into it later after this.
It exists, and it's not about taco. Yeah, I was thinking about I gotta come up with a package that tells you how to make tacos, maybe 100 different ways of taco recipes. That could be fun.
Oh,
Somebody
wow.
have taco.py, so.
Yeah, no, actually, I recommend people look up. We'll put a link in the show notes. Go to PyPy or PyPI, as other people call it, and search for taco. It's an interesting package. But I guess moving on with our topic here, Bruno actually noticed when he was looking at the source code for your game, he noticed that you're not using a setup.py for your projects, but you're using a new distribution format called FLIT, F-L-I-T, right? Which uses a flit.ini file. So why are you using this? Why did you choose this format over, I guess, the old setup tool style?
I found Flit is easier to use, and I learned, so I'm actually kind of new to packaging things. So a few months ago, I had to package a tool that I wrote for core workflow. It's called Cherry Picker. So that I wrote that. It's a utility command line tool that will backport the changes you made to master, CPython master, back to 3.6, 3.5, or 2.7. It basically does git cherry pick, create a branch, delete the branch, push it to origin, and then create the pull request. So I had to package it, and I learned using setup tools, and it worked, but it took some time for me to figure out how to use it, how to package using setup tools. But when Red Cannon recommended me Flit, he said this is easy. I look at it, it's basically one file instead of the meta file or the whatever setup tools have. Really easy to use, straightforward, and just Flit publish, I think. I just found it so much easier than setup tools. So I decided to use it, and we use it in our core workflows. That's how we publish Cherry Picker, and that's how we publish Learn. And that's what I would recommend to anyone else new who wants to learn how to package. I think it's a better way. That's why I use it. And really, I wrote Tic Tac Taco Pizza during sprint at PyCon Australia, and I was able to publish it within like 5-10 minutes. So
That's pretty cool. I guess it's also a good segue into my next topic, which is I would like to know about your opinion on Python packaging in general. So we talk about PEP 517. We're talking about how I think you just recommended that people would go with Flit instead of setup tools because it's easier. So what's your opinion about Python packaging?
Python packaging, I think I find it something that we took for granted, that it's like magic, and we don't care how it works. It just works. But when it doesn't work, everybody got mad and angry and blaming people, but they don't realize that there are so many people that depends on this in order for their product to work. But there are really very few individuals in the whole world that really oversees this thing, and they do it. They don't get paid to do this, and I think that's something we take for granted. I think we need to appreciate the packaging maintenance more, and I think that's what I think about it. That we should not take it for granted. I know it's magic, but it's awesome.
Yeah. So how can people show their appreciation? What are some of the ways that people can actually show the appreciation for those who have been doing this kind of work?
You can sponsor the PSF, become a member, or sometimes just be a positive member and not. I mean, I've seen individuals who have been, maybe they're feeling entitled because their thing broke, and they are saying, well, you should have done a better job at this, or I'm gonna keep pinging you until you fix this bug or whatever. Those things add stress to the maintainers' time, and I think people need to realize we are all volunteers. I think very few people actually got paid to contribute to Python, so we are all in this together. So I mean, yes, some of us depend on Python more than the others. Some of us just using as hobby, but be respectful. That's all I'm asking.
Gotcha. Okay. So in the show notes, we'll include a link to the PSF, the Python Software Foundation, and then you can read about how you can also join and sponsor people who are working to make sure that you get to use Python for free. All right. So for those listening to the audio part of this episode, Mariatta just gave us a quick demo for her game, which you can see on the YouTube channel. We're going to include a link, and you can follow through the show notes. And you actually, if you haven't seen the video yet, if you're not watching this live, you can see the demo later on.
All right, so I think I would change the topic again. And we saw that PyCascades will happen this next January 2018. Can you tell us a bit about the event itself? What type of talks should the one expect to see? And is it too late to submit a talk proposal?
No, all right. So PyCascade is a new regional Python conference in the Pacific Northwest. So that's basically BC, Canada, Washington, USA, and Oregon, USA. And it's organized by members of the Python community from those areas. So we have organizers from Vancouver, like myself. We have Don and Alan from Seattle who organize Puppy, and we have Eric from Portland. And it's not too late to submit a talk. It's still open until August 28th, I think, so another 2 weeks. So I would love to see more talk proposals. And we are open for anything, like you have technical talks about Python standard library, on how you use Python in different fields. I'll be interested to hear more about the use of Python in various different fields. Like, I think I've been involved with, web-based application. I hear a lot about Django. I'd like to hear how people use it in fields like bioinformatics, education, all those different fields that I'm not involved in. I think those are interesting. Like, you use Python to make video games. I like to hear more about it, and I'll also be open to hear talks about, how can we make the community better, Python community. So I don't want to come up with only technical talks. I would like to hear about things like mental health, bettering community, mentorship, things like that. So it's still open, and there are financial aid available for those who could not, come if they need support in order to be able to come to present their talk, and it's open. You can apply for it. So I look forward to see more talk proposals and hope people can join us in Vancouver 4 months from now.
Sounds good. Does it get really cold around January there? I bet it's pretty cold.
It can be cold, maybe around 10 degrees Celsius, I think, 0 to 10. It might be raining, and so it's not a good time to go to the beach, but it's a good time to go to the mountain and go to ski or snowboard, something like that.
Pretty cool. All right. I may consider submitting a talk. Sounds good. Sounds really good. All right. So we've now reached the point where we do our top 5 segment. This is where we ask our guests about their preferences and suggestions around music, books, and movies. So to get things rolling, Mariatta, I would like to ask you to tell us about your preferences and suggestions around music.
Music. So I'm a big fan. So I listen to pretty much one singer, and his name is Darren Hayes. And I think many people don't know him, but you might know his associated act. So he was the lead singer for a band called Savage Garden that was popular back in the 90s. The band broke up and he went on a solo career. So I've been following his career ever since. And at this point, his music just becomes my comfort music. Like I just want to listen to him. He could be singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. I don't care. I like his music. But so Darren Hayes, and I think 2 of my favorite songs are Taken by the Sea and Who Would Have Thought. And when I don't listen to him, sometimes I do change to listen to other musicians. I really like Toni Braxton, also from the 90s. I'm really old. I like her song He Wasn't Man Enough or something like that. I like that song. I also listen to Depeche Mode, Duran Duran, and Aha. So I think those are 5 musics. That covers it.
Cool. Yeah, no, that did it. That's a very interesting collection you got there. And you said you're old. Well, I know all those bands and people, so I guess I must be as old then. Probably older. I would say I'm older, but thank you. That was quite an interesting list.
Cool. What else?
Yeah, so just before we move to the next topic, I'd like to mention that we have a Spotify playlist.
Okay.
And I will make sure that your suggestions go into that playlist, especially the ones that you've mentioned the music name. So
All right.
it's kind of eclectic playlist. So everyone that comes to the podcast leave the suggestions, and then we add there. So
Okay.
there are some Brazilian music, some pop music, some rock, and things like that. So if you need something more eclectic, you can follow our playlist. We'll leave the link on the show notes. And now we can go to the next topic, which is what do you like in terms of movies? So since you work on the this field, what do you like to watch?
So I really like all of the, this is my guilty pleasure, all the Resident Evil movies. So I like zombie shows. So Resident Evil 1 to 6, maybe except the 5th one. I like that a little less than others. I also like that movie Now You See Me, the first one. I haven't seen the second one. I'm interested. I like a few Hong Kong movies like Kung Fu Hustle. I'm not sure if people know about it, so it has Stephen Chow in it. Can I mention TV shows that are not movies?
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely.
Okay, I really like The Good Wife, the TV series, because it's a woman lawyer. They talk a lot about tech. I'm sad that the show ended, but I think it ended nicely. But that's one of my favorite TV shows. And Law and Order, I watch all of them, all of them. So I'm a fan of Law and Order. So those are my movies and TV shows.
Sweet. So before I ask the I guess in my opinion I'm biased, but the best category of them all, okay, and I'll mention what that is. But I don't know, have you seen any commercials or trailers for the new Bruce Lee movie that's coming out in, I guess, a couple of weeks?
No, I haven't. I have to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. I am very excited about it. And it's been a while since I've seen a good Kung Fu movie. I'm really excited about this one. So, all right, if you're listening to this, go check it out on YouTube or whatever. It looks pretty cool. All right, so now for the hottest category of the top 5, in my not so humble opinion, what do you like to read in terms of books or anything at all that you like to read?
So I used to read a lot of detective novels, like murder mysteries, like by the author Agatha Christie. That I read many of her books, and it's mostly a crime happened, and then there's a detective unraveled how was the crime made, and there was later on revealed who murdered the person. But alongside that is also there's this story about what motivates a person that they want to kill somebody else, and they went to great lengths to hide it. But to me, it's not about finding out how or who did what. I've always also fascinated with what happened to this person that he do such terrible thing. So I read a lot of this kind of books, and I'm afraid to admit this because my husband started thinking that maybe I'm maybe I'm psychopath or whatever, that I like this, but I don't know. It's the kind of stories I grew up with. I read a lot of those. So Agatha Christie. The other author that I like is John Dixon Carr. He also writes similar type of books, so detective. The book that I like is called The Hollow Man. So he's specialized in closed room murders. It's really interesting. So I think it's one of the best detective novels ever. I also read a lot of comic books, especially Japanese comic books like manga. And the one I really like is called Blackjack, and it's written by, if people are familiar with Astro Boy. So this book is written by the same person who made Astro Boy. What else? I also like Dan Brown novels like The Lost Symbol or The Da Vinci Code. Those are kind of interesting to me, that he goes around finding puzzles out of, classic arts. So it's really interesting for me. The other book that I've started reading recently is not a fiction. It's called Two Scoops of Django, that just came out recently. So because I want to learn more about Django, I thought I know about it, but it's keep changing, and I'm a web developer, so I just want to be better at my skills. So I bought it. I've started reading a few chapters, and I'm already learning a lot. So I want to continue reading it. So Two Scoops of Django. Great book.
Awesome. So since you mentioned Dan Brown, do you have you heard that he's actually releasing a new book coming out in October or November?
No.
I don't remember what the title is, but I know that he's releasing something. So
nice. Is it the Robert Langdon series, or?
I believe it is. Yet another one for the series. Yeah, exactly. And I read them all, so I'm excited. I want to see. I want to read this one. Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, so I think that I speak on behalf of the entire podcast crew when I say that this has been a very interesting and fun interview for all of us. I learned many things about you. I know that you and I have spoken before, but I now I know that you don't like Pep 8, or you don't follow it. I should say.
No.
It's not that you don't like, you don't follow it.
No, it's just a guideline to me. So, but don't force me to follow it. I don't follow it.
Yeah. So I learned that today. I also learned about documentation not being your forte for your code. I also learned that you like a lot about mysteries, which is pretty cool. I really enjoy learning that. So it's definitely been really a lot of fun for all of us. I'm pretty sure I can speak on behalf of everyone here. And we really enjoyed talking to you. And we thank you very much for taking the time to answer all of our questions. So I guess I would like to ask you now, do you want to say a final message? Is that anything that you'd like to tell our listeners, the people who are following us right now live on YouTube, or the people who will be listening to the audio section, the audio segment for this podcast? Is that anything you would like to tell them?
Well, just want to say thank you so much for having me here. I don't know whether you really want to hear so much about myself talking for an hour, but
we did.
I hope you really enjoy it, and I've been trying to get more people to contribute. To CPython, and if anybody would like some guidance or whatever, I'm not saying I can help you. I can help with everything, but I would love to help you get started. If I think some people may just don't know how to start, and I think you asked me about this earlier. If I pointed out a few websites, like go to the Backtracker, there's a documentation, there's a dev guide, but if I could help somehow, I may not be able to really help with everything, but just let me know, or I can try to introduce you to another person who might be able to help you better. So if anybody wants to start contributing, I'd like to help.
If you are a new listener and you enjoyed this episode in English, please let us know so that we can bring more non-Brazilian Portuguese speaking guests. If you have any suggestions for new guests, please let us know via our Twitter and Facebook accounts, or simply drop us a note on our website. See you all next time.
Jelly roll is sweet, it's really hard to beat. I know you want it, but you can't have it, 'cause I ain't gonna give you none. Come on! gonna give nobody none of my jelly roll. I wouldn't give you a piece of this cake to save your soul. My mom told me today, before she went away, to be a good boy, she'd bring me a toy. I'm my mama's red hot boy. Now there ain't no use for you to keep on hanging round. I love you, but I've got to let you down. Oh, Lord, your jelly roll is fine, but it ain't as good as mine. I know you want it, but you can't have it, 'cause I ain't gonna give you none.